good morning. Welcome you to Beacon Hill. I'm glad you're here this morning. If you're wondering who's sitting down front, this is Thelma Best. You're going to hear her talk a little bit later, and it's just easier for us to remain here. So as we worship today, we're going to see someone sitting right in front of us. So she's going to smile, you're going to smile at her, and it's going to be wonderful, all right? But we're thankful that you're here today. And each week when we come together as a community of faith, we always share an ethos statement that emphasizes some of the values that are important to our congregation, and we're going to do that again today. If you will notice on the screen behind me, I believe that it will flash up there. Let's say the words out loud if you can. Married, divorced, and single here is one family that mingles here. Conservative and liberal here. We've all got to give a little here. Big and small here, there's room for us all here. Doubt and believe here, we all can receive here. Gay and straight here, there's no hate here. Woman and man here, everyone can hear. Trans and cis here, no one is dismissed here. Whatever your race here, for all of us grace here. In imitation of the remarkable love Almighty God has for each of us and all of us, let us live and love without labels. Now, for some time, we have been saying that each week. And if you're here, or if you watch by video, which some people will be watching this by video, you know we emphasize those values because our church wants to be inclusive and loving and welcoming to all people. But we'd like to remind ourselves that labels, while sometimes useful and needed, after all, labels are very human things. Somebody chose a name for us when we were born, which is a label. And the labels can be helpful. They can help communicate something about us, but they can also be limited because none of us really fit neatly in one label, but often many. And by recognizing the limitations of labels and celebrating the fact that that we as human beings transcend those labels and that love should be inclusive of all members of the human family, we say that each week to emphasize those values. And we're going to see some of those values emphasized during this service today. And I thank you so much for being here. This time I'll ask those who are going to lead us in prayer to come forward.
Join me in prayer. We've come here today for many reasons, for many contexts. There are no doubt those in this room this morning feeling low, as well as those feeling joy and gratitude. We come together from these different places to reflect, to meditate, to grow, to participate, to build community, and to be reminded of the power of love over hatred. So I pray that where there's hatred, may we still love. Where there's despair, may we find ways to offer solidarity, empathy, compassion. May we learn to understand others, to listen, not just wanting to others to understand us. May we learn to express a faith that isn't otherworldly, but an ethic, a practice that disrupts, even in very small ways maybe, disrupts the broken cycles at work in our world of shame, prejudice, greed, injustice. And may we leave this place today with a renewed vision to be instruments of peace in this world. Amen.
Let's stand. I'm going to take you guys to Sunday school. Come on, stand up. See how many of you remember this old classic. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Words look familiar? Anybody remember this song from Sunday school? Raise your hand if you remember this song from Sunday school 1,000,000 years ago. Those of us who are roughly 1,000,000 years old. All right, we'll do it. You'll catch on. Beloved, let us love one another. For love is of God, and everyone that loveth is born of God, and knoweth God. He that loveth not, knoweth not God, for God is love. Beloved, let us love one another. 1 John 4, 7 and 8. Beloved, let us love one another. There you go. For love is of God, and everyone that loveth is born of God, and knoweth God. He that loveth not, knoweth not God, for God is love. Beloved, let us love one another. 1 John right, then we'll do something that I know you know. I'm pressing on the upward way. New heights I'm gaining every day. Still praying as I'm onward bound. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand by faith on heaven's tableland. A higher faith that I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. My heart has no desire to stay where doubts arise and fears dismay. Though some days when he's around, my prayer, my aim is higher ground. Lord, lift me up, and let me stand by faith on heaven's tableland. A higher faith that I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Beloved, let us love one another. For love is of God, and everyone that loveth is born of God, and knoweth God. He that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. Beloved, let us love one another. 1 John 4, 7 and 8.
All right, this one is 1 John chapter 4, verses 16 through 21. God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. Love has been perfected among us in this, that we may have boldness on the day of judgment, because as he is, so are we in this world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not reached perfection in love. We love because he first loved us. Those who say, I love God, and hate a brother or sister are liars. For those who do not love a brother or sister whom they have seen cannot love God, whom they have not seen. The commandment we have from him is this: those who love God must love their brothers and sisters also. It is written.
Jessica, from that reading from 1 John, we've done a lot in 1 John today. That verse, that passage reminds us of the importance of love and how God loves us, and we are to love others. If we truly love God, we will love others. All of our siblings, not only within our faith of Christianity, but outside of it as well. Well, I've been looking forward to this moment for a while because I talked to Thelma about this from different times, about her coming and sharing her word with us about her experience and her support for particularly the gay and lesbian, bisexual community, and as well as transgender people of this city and this county through the years. But before she shares her story, let me give you a little preface by giving a little bit of history. In 2007, I was still at the early 2007, I was still at the First Baptist Church in Sneads, Florida. It was a Southern Baptist congregation, and I was looking to get out of the Southern Baptist Convention. And I'm glad I did, because I told the group over in the study group this morning, I left the Southern Baptist Convention, and I did not let the door hit me in the back pocket. And I was glad to be away from that. But I met the pastor search team of what was then called the Lakeland Fellowship at a restaurant in Lake City, Florida. It was neutral territory, and they wanted to have a conversation with me, get a feel for me and who I was, and see if I might be a fit for the congregation here in Lakeland. Bill Futch drove the group up. Bill Futch was the leader of that team. Ed Thrower was on that team. Judy Godwin was on that team. The late Evelyn Witherington was on that team. Brian Cable. There was a group of people who came up as part of this team to have an interview with me. One of the questions Ed Thrower asked me is, how do I feel about the questions surrounding homosexuality? Southern Baptist Convention couldn't get together even on Mother's Day without talking about the gay agenda, and that was one of my concerns. It was just one with the Southern Baptist Convention, and I told Ed that I didn't believe homosexuality was a sin, and that we ought to have places where people can be welcomed and affirmed in congregations. And so Judy Godwin asked me, so he said, if so I've invited a gay friend of mine, or a gay or lesbian friend of mine, are you going to embarrass me by saying something negative about people who are gay? I said, I absolutely will not. And we've been true to that to this day. But they mentioned to me a person in the congregation at that time by the name of Thelma, who had been a longtime advocate for people who were gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgender in this community. And I got to meet her when I came here, and she told me about PFLAG, when at that time was meeting at Westminster Presbyterian Church, which was a welcoming, affirming congregation, one of the only that I knew of outside of Christ's Promise over in Auburndale that was a truly welcoming, affirming congregation in Lakeland at that time. And I started attending PFLAG meetings. Carrie McCoy, who is here with us today, was at that first meeting, and she's been faithful and committed to Polk Pride and all that involves with that ever since then. But I found out about that meeting from Thelma, got involved with that meeting, and the rest is history. Our church hosts every year, at least for some time now, the Pride and Faith service, and we had the largest attended service we've ever had just a couple of weeks ago, or last week, not last week, but the week before last, on Thursday night of Pride Week, and 183 people. You can see we're at Pride in the Park. If you wonder what all that artwork, it's not artwork, it's people sign our page at the Pride in the Park booth that we have, and they sign little messages of affirmation and encouragement and thanks, and that's hanging on our wall from Polk Pride. And so the Beacon Hill Fellowship, I'm proud to say, is as welcoming and affirming as any congregation you'll find, I think, anywhere. And part of the reason that is true is because of Thelma Best. And so I want you to hear her story. And I trust we're going to have this recorded, and we've got the cameras aimed in the right direction. If not, get them there, please, but because that's an important part of this. So Thelma, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm going to let you have the service now, all right?
Follow me with my journey. It starts in 1978. I come home from teaching elementary school, 6th grade, shuck my shoes and lie down on the bed. My husband won't come home until after 8. He sells cars for Cannon Buick. I don't have to rush for dinner. My son comes in from Polk Community College, where he is attending on a drama scholarship. And he comes to the door of my bedroom. I'm now reading a book. And he says, Mom, I need to ask you a question. So I put my book down. He walks in and he says, Mom, I think I'm gay. Can you still love me? I put my book down. I looked at him and I said, John, I think I'm fat. Can you love me? For a second, he was in shock. He stared at me, and then my 138 IQ and his 142 IQ made connections. Our two hearts had beat as one for 19 years. And he comes home and asks me this ludicrous question, can you still love me? I smiled, half a smile at him, because suddenly we clicked in. He gave me the biggest hug. I thought he was never going to let me go. And then he went off down the hall, but before he got to his door, I heard him sob. He was so relieved. I lay there. I wasn't interested in that book anymore. And my mind began to run. Think it through. I wonder how many people know this. And who are they? And why would they know before I know? John had had girlfriends since second grade. He started to second grade the first year that I got out of college and taught. So we were right down the hall from one another. Because he came from a Tampa school to a Brandon school, his records had to be transferred. His second grade teacher came to me and she said, I need to ask you a question about John. Okay. She said, most children in first grade read 5 books. That's 3 pre-primers, a primer, and the first reader, which is the first hardback book. She said, John's records have a list of 27 books. I've never seen a first grader with a list of books like this. So, John was an above average child. In the second grade, he talked too much with a girl named Meg that sat by him. So the teacher separated them. When she did, John quit working. He went into a purple funk. And she put up with it for a week, and then she kept him after class one day, and she said, John, tell me, what is going on? You're not doing your work. And he said to her, I only had one friend, and you took her away from me, and I just don't feel like working. So she put Meg back, and he went back to work. The second time I noticed John's girlfriend was 6th grade. It was, I guess, his first love, whatever. But it broke up. And then later, when he went to high school, he had the same girlfriend for 3 years in a row. She was the daughter of a 6th Circuit judge. And her family was so fond of him that they did everything. They had the chorus together, the advanced chorus together, they did all the plays together. They were in everything at school. It was just wonderful. The folks had a summer house on a lake, and the judge would gave him a credit card so that he could take his daughter out there and go to the canteen. Sometimes they gave John little jobs like painting some part of it or something. And so here he's got a key to their lake house. He's got a credit card for anything that the kids want. And then he comes home and he's told me he's gay. Well, when I was working on my psych major in college, which I had taken because I wanted to understand child behavior and development as much as I wanted to study what I would teach them. Mostly about motivation. But on one occasion, a psych professor had said, about 3% of the population is gay. We don't know why. We can't find a gay gene. And he said, sometimes young people experiment, and then they get married and lead straight lives the rest of the time. So, I deferred judgment. I didn't really believe that 2 people of the same sex could love one another like my husband and I loved one another. But I deferred judgment. His father did not. To him, it was a choice, and he set out to change his mind, but never in front of me. After 2 years at PCC, John was 1 credit short of the degree due to acting in so many plays. He went to New York City to pursue a career in show business. He got a room at the YMCA at the beginning, and after about a year or so, he got a roommate named Glenn Gary. I thought, that's nice, someone to share the rent with. He wasn't alone, and Glenn was a New Yorker. He knew how to survive in the big city. He taught John to be a waiter between acting jobs. Now, let's fast forward to 1990. It's 2 days after Mother's Day. John comes to visit. For 3 days, he says nothing, but I have a problem at school. I have a project where the principal's letting us paint dinosaurs on the sidewalk outside about 30 feet of them. And when I need to put some greenery in these, and I don't know how to paint the foliage because it's not pinnate leaves, it's like pine tree needles. And John is terrific at figuring out artwork. So I take him to school with me, and he takes a couple of pieces of cardboard about like this. He cuts a circle inside without and he takes the 2 pieces and puts them together so that it looks like it makes a cross. Then he takes this, he dips it into a pan of paint, and he stamps it, and doing it over and over, he makes the perfect leaves like I need. The boys and girls go to phys ed, and John and I have a half an hour. He says to me, Mom, I've been trying to tell you something for 3 days, and I just can't find the right time and the right place, so I've got to tell you now. He said, I'm HIV positive, and I have AIDS. He said, Glenn is also HIV positive, but he's not sick yet. We have made plans. I have come home to tell you that I don't want you and Dad to worry about anything. We've got all the bases covered. He says, we are going to be cremated. I have a $1 million health insurance policy that's good worldwide that's been given to me by the people I'm working for. Glenn has medical training from the military, and he's worked in a military hospital. He knows all about everything I'll need, and he will take care of me. We have planted a garden, and it's really pretty, and it's where our ashes are going to be placed. I've got 10 minutes till the kids come back to phys ed. This is no time to get emotional. So I gave him a big hug, and I said, we're going to fight this thing. I knew that if he could keep the opportunistic diseases down, he could live. So I sent him home. November, let me think, excuse me. He invites me to come to where he lives and his father, and we go there in the summer. It's a beautiful place, huge backyard. The garden where he's going to put his ashes is great. It's a wonderful trip. On the day we get there, there's a reception for us at the Golf and Country Club. with the most gorgeous array of carved fruit you've ever seen. The people there in that neighborhood are city people with summer houses. There's a Catholic family, there's a Jewish family. The owner of the house that they're staying in is a Jewish attorney from the city. And it's a entertainment situation. Every night we have a dinner at somebody's home, and everywhere we go, John is loved. After one of the dinners at night, we get back to the bedroom, and John, my husband, bursts into tears. And I said, honey, what's the matter? Why are you crying? He said, I just can't believe that so many people love John. So we finished the events and came back home. And I'm deferring judgment, gritting my teeth. Cremation is not a custom in my family. I don't even like to burn my finger with the iron. I am really, really upset, but I'm keeping a facade. I'm deferring judgment. I have told them, we have told them that if they want to come home, please do. We want them here. But for him to die and be cremated, and I'm not even going to voluntary. So I come home and I start the school year. Guess what? We get a phone call in October. John and Glenn want to come to Florida. And my mother has a mobile home, but she'd really rather stay in my home with me, was there. So she provides the mobile home for them to live in, so they can have privacy and be more comfortable, hopefully, rather than being so crowded in our home. On November the 13th of 1991, John passes away. Over 250 people came to the funeral. I really didn't expect that. I had written his obituary, and I had included Glenn's name with the family as his companion. Over 100 of those people drove the 25 miles to the cemetery for the graveside service. And at the end of the graveside service, instead of the people dispersing, they formed a double line and came by to give us condolences. Most of them shook my husband's hand, and then when they got to me, it seemed like everybody wanted a hug. One of the young men had tears in his eyes, and he gave me a hug and whispered in my ear, I wish my mother could understand like you. I didn't know what he was talking about. I had loved our son, had his funeral in the church, did the obituary. I had written a synopsis of what his career had been, because I knew that when he went to New York, he had done 24 plays. I looked on one of his resumes to get that. And I didn't know just what he was talking about. Three days later, I was reading about 140 sympathy cards And I discovered that 2 or 3 of them had checks in them saying, pass this along to whoever helps people with AIDS. I had no idea. So I asked Lynn to find out. Everything was very negative back then. Doctors didn't want you for a patient. Hairdressers didn't want to cut your hair. Dentists didn't want to clean your teeth. It was a mess. Even the Lakeland Hospital emergency room had turned John away, saying, we don't have any doctors who are prepared for AIDS patients. His doctor in New York had found a doctor in Winter Park, north of Orlando, and that was John's doctor. He also was a gay man. That's okay. You take whatever. Everybody's equal. So Glenn found an organization called PASS, Post Services. He got the date and location of the next meeting, the checks to them. They accepted them and invited me to attend their meeting. They were a small group of people who were mainly helping HIV patients pay insurance premiums. Because when they got when the people had told their employers that they had AIDS or HIV, they usually got rid of them. They downsized, they used every excuse in the book. But when they lost their jobs, they lost their health policies. And so, while at that meeting, a young woman told me she was a social worker and that she held a support group for gays in Winter Haven and invited me to go. I declined, saying my son was no longer alive and they probably wouldn't want me there. She replied, well, come sometime. You might get something out of it. I attended those past meetings and they invited me to attend a World AIDS Day for the first time. It was at Lake Morton, December 1 every year. And I went for several years. On one of those years, Glenn went with me. And we met at the lake on the east side. We had a small meeting with a prayer. And then we spread out around the lake. Everybody joined hands and just made a circle. And it took about 1/4 of the lake. And we're having a moment of silence up there. Suddenly a white van loaded with people sped around the lake, yelled something I didn't understand, but they stopped on the west side and began putting on white robes and pointed hats. They were the KKK. They had 3 little children with them who also put on white robes and pointed hats. I was standing between a black man who was HIV positive and Glenn, a white Jewish man who was HIV positive. And I knew that these were 2 of the main people that had suffered from the KKK's shenanigans. So I was not afraid for myself, but I feared what they might do or say to the men. I could feel the tension in the air as they marched toward us. At the beginning of our group, there was a young white woman in a wheelchair who had been infected by the blood transfusion. And when they stopped and talked to her, they sympathized with her, told her she was the innocent victim of AIDS. Then they proceeded to verbally insult the rest of the people. They were a little bit tired out by the time they got to us. They walked around half of Lake Morton and muttered something that I couldn't understand as they passed close enough for me to reach them. This is my first time seeing the KKK, especially up close. When they got past, we let out a breath of relief. They had not physically harmed anyone. We watched as they took off their robes and hats, got into their van, and they sped around the lake, slowed down next to us, and all screamed in unison, "We're glad you have AIDS, and we hope you all die." Naturally, we went home exhausted that night. Back at my church, a social worker wanted to start a support group for HIV plus people and got it approved by the council, then asked me to help him, so I called the headquarters of the PFLAG group in New York asking where I could buy pamphlets to pass out. To my surprise, they shipped me a large assorted box of them for free. They also informed me that we had a PFLAG telephone contact and gave me his name and phone number. Later, one night at a past meeting, the leader of the PGLA, that's Pope Gay and Lesbian Alliance, which is a social organization for gays, the president says to me, "We are having a meeting in my house. We're going to discuss how our churches have treated us. I would like you to come." I looked at him. I said, "Will they talk in front of me? I'm a mother. They've had trouble with their mothers. I'm a school teacher. They probably had school. I'm a Southern Baptist." He said, "Come, we'll find out." So I did. About 15 attended. He had borrowed tables and set them up in the dining room and made a big square. And fit perfectly. He sits me beside him at the head table, and then he calls on the first person to speak. The young man sits up straight, points his finger at me, and says, "I'm not saying a word till I find out why she is here." I wanted to give the leader my best "I told you so" look, but I stifled myself. He paused and figuring out what he was going to say. I put my hand over on his arm and said softly, "Would it be okay if I go first?" He nods yes. And so I began. "My name is Thelma Best. Last November, my gay son passed away with AIDS. Now my church wants to start a support group for people with AIDS, and I've been invited to be on that committee. I called an organization in New York City called PFLAG and asked where I might buy pamphlets to use for meetings. To my surprise, I've received a large box for free. I've brought them with me, and if you will, after your meeting is over, I would like you to look at them and tell me if they seem true and appropriate for our meetings." One pamphlet is entitled, "10 Things to Know Before You Come Out to Your Parents." Another one is a list of clergymen from several denominations and one rabbi who support the gays. I don't see any Southern Baptist on it. The third one is titled, "No One Can Separate You from the Love of God." Suddenly, the elephant in the room disappeared. The tension was gone. They addressed the topic of the day, how their church had treated them. Some had been told to get out. Some in the chorus had been no longer given solos to sing. Some had been shunned, just not included in fellowship, and no longer felt comfortable or welcome. I had also asked them 2 questions. I want to know if being gay is a choice, and I want to know when you first felt you were gay. I teach 6th grade. I want to better understand child development, and I don't understand why a bachelor and a master's degree. This subject was never covered. One addressed my 2 questions with one answer. He said, at about age 6 or 7, he felt different from other kids, but he had no vocabulary to explain it. I glanced around the room, and almost everyone was nodding their head in agreement. We took a break for refreshments, and I went out to mix and mingle. In the living room sat an Episcopal priest. He attended most meetings. He was a member of Mensa, an organization you have to have a very high IQ to belong, and he is also gay. He's been very nice to me, but he's got a sense of humor, and he's already needled me once. He referred to the creation in Genesis as one of the Christian myths. I responded with a big smile and moved on. I wasn't about to do battle with him. I was a member of Phi Kappa Phi, an international interdisciplinary organization, because I'd scored in the top 1% of my master's degree classes, but I couldn't compete with the Mensa mine. This time, he said to me, well, what do you think? Is it a choice? I took about half a minute to think, and I replied, well, I wouldn't ask a fish not to swim, nor a bird not to fly. I gave him a minute to think about that. I knew that these 2 creatures did what came normal, and I knew that the gay children had done the same thing, and I figured his Mensa mind could get to it in a minute. I went farther down the room to a nice lesbian couple who told me their names. One said she was a PE teacher, so we had something in common. The other said, I know you are a very nice person. I can see circles of light going in and out of your body. I said, really? I heard about those circles in my psych class. I have a major in psych also. I read little children can see them and later don't see them as adults because they suppress them when adults don't believe them. How nice that you can see them. And in the middle of my sentence, she went, oops, there goes another. And she laughed. We were near the front door. It suddenly opened and a young man came inside. He'd gone outside where it was cold to have a smoke and was wearing a big puffy jacket. He closed the door, backed up to it, and was looking at me as though he was waiting to talk to me. He was taller than me, and I was looking up to talk to his face. I don't remember what was said. I just remember telling him I had read that the suicide rate among gays was a concern, and I was very concerned. All this time he's wiggling inside that big jacket, and I thought he was taking it off. Then with his eyes, he slowly looked down, and my eyes followed his eyes, and suddenly, when I got to his wrists, I sucked in a big breath of air and held it. Both of his wrists had scars where he had tried to commit suicide. I was speechless. The blood in my veins turned to ice water, and I froze. Those long arms in that puffy jacket reached around and pulled me into a big bear hug. And about the time I got my breath back, a bell rang calling us back to the meeting. He smiled and walked me to the dining room. Everyone seemed anxious to see what was in the box. They got in little groups, examined and discussed every item, and approved each one. Now time marched on. My church sponsored a panel discussion on AIDS and the HIV virus. A parishioner's husband had died and left her with an AIDS-infected infant. The mother sang in the choir, and the infant was kept in the church nursery. This had caused a concern in the church. People feared that the virus may be or may become airborne. I was asked to be on a panel as the mother of an AIDS victim. The highest ranking person on the panel was a full professor at Florida Southern College teaching biology, PhD Dr. Robert Baum. He is now retired. I recently called him to ask his permission to use his name in my presentation today. He approved and added depth to my story. He is a virologist. He got his PhD in plant viruses, and it was a short step to add the human virus, HIV. His research has been shared with doctors all over the United States and the world. And time marched on. The PASS organization morphed into PHASE, Polk, Highlands, and Hardy County AIDS Organization, and I volunteered for 10 years. I served 2 years as the leader. I introduced the leader of PGLA, the Gay and Lesbian Social Organization, to the PFLAG telephone contact, a Presbyterian minister who had been a missionary in South America. And PFLAG of Polk County was born. The first 3 meetings were in my living room, then moved to the Unitarian Church, and I volunteered for PFLAG. The group from PGLA forged a church called Rainbow Promise. They now had a place to worship. I sewed a floor-to-ceiling and wall-to-wall drape for the backdrop behind the altar and attended one service. The time came when I started having AFib and tachycardia. I was late for several meetings and struggled to lead the PFLAG group. After one meeting, the Presbyterian minister said to me privately, "We think you have struggled enough. I will take over. We have decided to move the group to Winter Haven. You are welcome to come." As quickly as 2 checks saying, "Pass this along to people who have AIDS," and had thrown me into the gay world. I was now thrown out by AFib and tachycardia. But I knew it was in good hands, and I was satisfied. I still wish I could meet that young man who whispered in my ear, "I wish my mother could understand like you," because now I understand. I would like to thank you for allowing me to have this chance to share my story. I never dreamed I could be part of a church. I, too, am no longer a Southern Baptist. I want to thank Pastor Sizemore for allowing me to be here. And I want to thank Glenn Geary. Glenn didn't die in 2.5 years, more like my son did. There was only one antiviral at that time. The very next year, protease inhibitors became available, and he has ridden the opportunistic diseases terribly, but thank God he's still here. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you, Thelma. It was good to hear that story, and for other people to hear that story. And, you know, at any given moment in time when you're active in trying to help other people, and you may think, well, this is never going to make a difference. Hearing her story remind me, it does make a difference. And only a few people can help change the hearts and minds of people, even in a very conservative place like Polk County. And so I appreciate that story, and I appreciate your dedication to moving beyond simply your son's death to being a person of grace and acceptance and love. And that's what we want to be, most of all. So thank you very much for coming and sharing your story, Thelma.